Who let this little girl in here?
Just ignore her. Pretend you didn't see her. No way, Craig.
She's too dark. She'll just stand there and make a mess.
Whitney stood still, calm.
I just came to get my bag.
Bag? Or mop?
Craig grabbed a can of soda, stepped forward, poured it all over Whitney's head. The whole room burst into laughter. Whitney didn't move. A stream of brown liquid ran down her face. Her hands trembled. A man had witnessed it all on a ceiling camera. Every insult, every laugh. Who was that man? They were still laughing. They had no idea the man was watching. And what happened that Monday morning changed each of their lives forever. Let me take you back. 2 weeks before that soda ever touched Whitney's skin. 6:15 in the morning, Charlotte, North Carolina. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but Whitney Keller was already dressed. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of a navy blazer. Cream blouse underneath. Simple gold studs in her ears. Every detail chosen with care. Every button fastened with purpose. On the bedroom wall behind her hung 2 framed degrees. A bachelor's from Spelman College, an MBA from Howard University. 6 years of consulting work across 3 different firms. Whitney didn't stumble into corporate America. She earned her way in. 1 late night, 1 exam, 1 rejection letter at a time. In the kitchen, her husband Elliot leaned against the counter, coffee in hand. He watched her check her bag for the 3rd time. "You're going to be great," he said. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone." Whitney smiled, kissed his cheek. "I know, but I want to earn it, not inherit it." Elliot nodded slowly. He understood what she meant, and he respected it, even though a part of him worried about what she might face walking through those doors alone. She grabbed her keys and left. She didn't ride with him, didn't want to arrive in the same car, didn't want anyone connecting her name to his. Whitney Keller wanted to be known for her work, nothing else. The building rose 30 floors into the Charlotte skyline, steel and glass, sharp angles, the kind of tower that made you feel small before you even stepped inside. Whitney pushed through the revolving door. The lobby was massive, polished marble floors, the hum of air conditioning, the echo of heels clicking in every direction. On the far wall, etched into brushed steel, 4 words: Pinnacle Dynamics Consulting Group. She walked past the front desk, scanned her badge. The gate beeped and let her through. Elevator. 14th floor. Operations wing. The doors opened to fluorescent lighting and gray carpet. The smell of stale coffee and carpet cleaner hit her before anything else. Rows of cubicles stretched in every direction, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, low murmurs behind half-closed doors. The executive suite was on the 30th floor, 16 floors above her, a completely different world. Nobody on this floor knew who her husband was. Nobody knew that the man whose name sat on the building's letterhead went home to the same woman now unpacking a box of pens at desk 14B, and Whitney intended to keep it that way. By her 2nd hour, Whitney had already noticed the pattern. The 14th floor had over 40 employees. Only 3 of them were black. Whitney made 4. She noticed how the other 3 kept their heads down, how they ate lunch at their desks instead of the break room, how they smiled quickly and spoke quietly. She noticed, but she didn't say anything. Not yet. The woman who ran the floor, unofficially at least, was Brenda Lawson, senior account manager, 12 years with the company. Brenda didn't manage people through leadership. She managed them through volume. Her voice was always the loudest. Her opinions were always the first. And her circle of loyal followers always laughed at the right time. Craig Norris sat 2 desks from Brenda, late 30s, the kind of man who never led but always followed, whoever had the most power. Right now, that was Brenda. So Craig laughed when Brenda laughed, mocked who Brenda mocked. And right now, Brenda's attention was locked on the new hire at desk 14B. Whitney felt it before she heard it. That familiar weight of being watched. She looked up and caught Brenda staring. Brenda smiled, teeth only, no warmth, and said just loud enough for the nearby desks to hear, "Oh, welcome. We just love our diversity hires around here." A few people chuckled. Craig grinned. Whitney's jaw tightened. She breathed in slow, breathed out slower. Then she sat down, opened her laptop, and got to work. At 5:15 that evening, as Whitney walked toward the elevator, a woman in a gray custodial uniform stopped her in the hallway. Denise Holloway, mid-50s, kind eyes, a mop in one hand and honesty in the other. "Keep your head up on this floor, baby," Denise said quietly. "Some of them smile with their teeth and bite with their eyes." Whitney looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. She had a feeling Denise wasn't exaggerating. Whitney's first week at Pinnacle Dynamics played out like a slow-motion collision. Not one big explosion, but a series of small, deliberate cuts. The kind that don't bleed right away. The kind that add up until one morning you look down and realize you've been bleeding the whole time. Monday morning, 9 o'clock team meeting. Whitney arrived 10 minutes early. She pulled out her notebook, uncapped her pen, and sat in the back row near the window. Sunlight hit the conference table. The air smelled like dry erase markers and burnt coffee from the machine in the corner. Brenda walked in, scanned the room. Her eyes passed over Whitney like she was part of the wall. "All right, everyone's here," Brenda announced. "Let's get started." Whitney raised her hand. "Actually, I didn't receive the agenda email. Could someone forward it to me?" Brenda didn't look at her. "It went out Friday. Check your spam." It wasn't in spam. It was never sent to her. Whitney checked 3 times. Then a 4th, just to be sure she wasn't imagining things. She wasn't. By Tuesday, it happened again. A client prep meeting for the Whitfield account. Whitney's name wasn't on the invite list. She only found out because she overheard Craig talking about it near the coffee machine, laughing about how the client's CEO mispronounced his own company name. She walked up to him, polite, professional, shoulders back. "Hey, I think I was left off the invite for the Whitfield meeting." Craig barely glanced at her. "That meeting's for senior staff." "I was assigned to that account on my first day." Craig shrugged, took a sip of his coffee. "Talk to Brenda." She did. Brenda's response came with a smile that could cut glass. "Oh, sweetie, I must have missed your name. You know how hectic things get around here. I'll make sure to add you next time." Next time never came. Whitney waited, checked her inbox every hour. Nothing. Wednesday. A group email went out summarizing the week's project updates. Whitney had written the entire competitive analysis for the Whitfield account. 12 pages of research, 3 data tables, 22 footnotes. She'd spent 2 nights on it, skipped lunch one day to finish the formatting. Her name appeared nowhere in the email. The work was credited to Craig Norris. Whitney stared at her screen, read the email twice, 3 times. Her fingernails pressed into her palms under the desk hard enough to leave crescent marks in her skin. She forwarded the email to Brenda with a simple professional note. "Hi, Brenda. Just flagging that the competitive analysis was my work. Would appreciate proper attribution. Thanks, Whitney." Brenda never replied. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. Thursday brought something worse. Whitney was preparing slides for a client presentation when Craig appeared at her desk. He dropped a printed coffee order on her keyboard. The paper landed right on top of her open file. "Hey, we've got a client coming in at 2. Can you grab these from the cafe downstairs? Oat milk latte for Brenda, black coffee for me, and one of those little pastry things if they have them." He smiled. "You don't mind, right? You're still getting the hang of things." Whitney looked at the paper, then at Craig. She kept her voice even. "I'm not an assistant, Craig. I'm on the same team as you." Craig held up both hands, palms out, like she'd just pulled a weapon. "Whoa, relax. I was just asking a favor. No need to get all sensitive about it." He walked away. But the word sensitive carried across the floor like a signal flare. 2 cubicles over, someone looked up. A woman near the printer whispered something to the man beside her. Whitney caught one word: attitude. That was the moment she realized. It didn't matter how calm she stayed. It didn't matter how polite she was. In their eyes, she was always one sentence away from being labeled the angry black woman. By Friday, Whitney had started keeping a notebook. Black leather, small enough to fit in her blazer pocket. She wrote down every incident, dates, times, exact words, names of anyone who witnessed it. She wrote in small, tight handwriting, like she was building a case. Because maybe she was. That same Friday, 12:15, Whitney sat alone in the break room. She'd brought lunch from home: rice, grilled chicken, steamed vegetables in a glass container. The microwave hummed behind her. She ate quietly, scrolling through her phone. The door swung open hard enough to bounce against the wall. Brenda walked in with Craig and 2 others. Loud, laughing. They grabbed sodas from the fridge and dropped into the chairs around the big center table, 3 feet from Whitney. Brenda spoke first, loud enough that it was clearly meant to be heard. I just don't understand why they keep lowering the bar around here. At some point, we have to be honest. Not everyone is built for this level of work. Craig nodded, cracking open his can. Some people get in on merit. Some people get in because the company needs to check a box. A diversity checkbox, Brenda added. Her eyes slid toward Whitney. She didn't even try to hide it. Whitney set her fork down. The metal clinked against the glass container. She looked up, calm, direct. Her voice didn't shake. I have an MBA and 6 years of consulting experience. I'm plenty qualified to be here. The room went dead silent. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. Brenda froze mid-sip. Then she lowered her can, smiled, slow, icy, deliberate. Oh, honey, I wasn't talking about you. She let the pause stretch. But if the shoe fits... Craig laughed. One of the others coughed to cover a smirk. The last one stared at the floor. Whitney packed her lunch, closed the container, stood up, walked out without another word. Her hands were steady, her eyes were dry. But inside her chest, something burned, hot and quiet, like embers pressed between her ribs. The following Monday, Whitney booked a meeting with Patricia Coleman, head of human resources. The earliest slot was 11:30. Whitney arrived at 11:25. Patricia's office was small and beige. It smelled like lavender air freshener and old paper. Framed corporate values hung on the wall behind her desk. Integrity, respect, inclusion, big gold letters, clean frames. Whitney wondered if anyone in this building had ever actually read them. She sat across from Patricia and laid everything out. The missed meeting invites, the stolen credit on the Whitfield analysis, the coffee run, the break room comments. She pulled out her notebook, read the entries one by one. Dates, times, direct quotes, witnesses. Patricia listened. She nodded occasionally, folded her hands on the desk. She wrote nothing down. When Whitney finished, Patricia inhaled slowly. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I really do. But Brenda has been with this company for 12 years. She's a strong performer. Sometimes personalities just clash, especially when someone is new and still adjusting to the culture. Whitney's back straightened. This isn't a personality clash. She excluded me from meetings. She took credit for my work. She made racially coded comments in front of witnesses. Patricia tilted her head slightly. Racially coded. That's a very strong accusation, Whitney. Do you have concrete proof that her comments were racially motivated? She called me a diversity checkbox in front of 4 people. Patricia paused, tapped one finger on the desk, then smiled, the same kind of practiced, hollow smile that Brenda used. I'll look into it. Give me a few days. Whitney stood. Thank you. She walked out, knowing exactly what would happen next. The same thing that always happened. Nothing. A week passed. No follow-up call. No email. No investigation memo. Not even a courtesy check-in from Patricia's office. Whitney saw Patricia once in the hallway. Patricia smiled brightly, said, "Good morning," kept walking. Quick steps, no eye contact. Like the meeting never happened. That evening, Denise Holloway was mopping the 14th floor hallway when Whitney walked past. Denise took one look at her face and set the mop against the wall. "You went to HR, didn't you?" Denise said softly. Whitney nodded. Denise let out a slow breath. "Baby, I've been working in this building 9 years. I've seen people file complaints that could have shut this whole floor down. You know where those complaints ended up?" Whitney waited. "Same place everything else goes around here." Denise picked up her mop. "The trash." Whitney didn't respond. She pressed the elevator button and watched the numbers climb. The hallway was quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her like they always did, cold and constant and completely indifferent. She wasn't angry, not yet, but she was done expecting this building to protect her. If no one else was going to keep a record, she would. Every word, every look, every time they made her feel like she didn't belong. That notebook in her pocket was getting thicker by the day. Something shifted after Whitney went to HR. Not in the way she hoped, but in the worst possible direction. Brenda found out. Whitney never learned how. Maybe Patricia mentioned it. Maybe someone saw Whitney walk into the HR office and whispered about it. It didn't matter. Brenda knew. And she took it as a personal attack. Before the HR visit, Brenda had been strategic. She disguised every insult as a joke, every exclusion as an oversight, every humiliation as a misunderstanding, small enough to deny, quiet enough that bystanders could convince themselves it wasn't that serious. After the HR visit, she didn't bother hiding anymore. Monday morning, Whitney arrived at 8:45, coffee in hand, ready to start her day. But when she turned the corner toward her desk, it wasn't there. Her monitor, her keyboard, her files, her nameplate, everything had been moved, relocated overnight to a windowless corner next to the supply closet, wedged between a filing cabinet nobody had opened in years, and a wall that smelled like damp cardboard and dust. The fluorescent tube above her new spot flickered every few seconds, just often enough to make your temples ache after 20 minutes. The air vent above rattled in bursts like a broken engine trying to start. The closest window was 40 feet away. The closest coworker was 3 rows over. It felt less like a workspace and more like a punishment. 2 coworkers walked past. One glanced at the new setup, then at Whitney, then kept walking. The other didn't look up from his phone. Nobody explained it. Nobody apologized. The message was clear. You complained. This is what happens. Whitney sat down, opened her laptop, got to work. She didn't ask why, but she pulled out her notebook, wrote it down, date, time, description. By Tuesday, Brenda had introduced something worse. Public correction emails. Every piece of work Whitney submitted, Brenda would reply all to the department and CC upper management with line-by-line critiques. Whitney, paragraph 3 has a formatting inconsistency. This is basic level work. Please review the company style guide before submitting. Whitney, the data on page 6 doesn't match the source file. I corrected it myself. Accuracy is a baseline expectation here. The errors were fabricated or laughably minor. A missing comma, a font 1 point off template. But every email landed in the inboxes of directors and senior managers Whitney had never met. And every email told the same story. This woman is sloppy. This woman is unqualified. This woman does not belong at Pinnacle Dynamics. Nobody questioned it. Nobody checked whether Brenda's corrections were real. The portrait Brenda painted became the only version of Whitney that leadership ever saw. Craig made sure to pile on. Wednesday afternoon, the team gathered for a strategy session. Whitney had spent 3 full days building a new client intake proposal, 12 slides, detailed cost projections, recommendations backed by market research. She stood at the front of the room and presented calmly. Her voice was steady, her data was clean, Her numbers were airtight. When she finished, the room went quiet. But not impressed quiet. Permission quiet. Every pair of eyes drifted toward Brenda, waiting to be told how to react. Brenda said nothing, just raised one eyebrow. That was enough. Craig leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. That's cute, Whitney, really. But maybe run it by someone with actual experience before you waste the group's time. Two people laughed softly. Brenda's mouth curved into a slow, satisfied smirk. Nobody pushed back. Nobody said the numbers were solid. Nobody said a single word in Whitney's defense. Whitney closed her laptop, sat down. Her pulse hammered in her ears hard enough to make the room hum, but her face showed nothing. She had learned long ago that showing emotion in rooms like this only gave them ammunition. Thursday made it uglier. Whitney was walking back from the restroom when she heard Brenda's voice carrying from behind the printer station. Brenda never whispered. She never needed to. She wanted people to hear her. Honestly, I don't understand why she's still here. She can't handle basic feedback without running to HR like a child. She can't produce work without someone holding her hand. Some people aren't built for a real workplace. They want to be coddled. They want gold stars for showing up. Craig's voice followed, relaxed, almost entertained. She probably thinks she's untouchable. Company would never fire a diversity hire. Too much risk, too much paperwork. Well, Brenda said, her voice dropping into something low and self-righteous. Somebody needs to remind her. This is Pinnacle Dynamics, not a charity, not a shelter. Whitney stood frozen around the corner. She heard every syllable. Her hand found the notebook in her pocket. She gripped it until her knuckles turned white. Then she opened it, wrote everything down. Date, time, word for word, closed it, slid it back. She told herself to breathe, to wait, to let the system work. But the system had already shown her what it thought of her. Patricia smiled, nodded, and did nothing. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly the way it was designed. Just not for people who looked like Whitney. Friday, end of week 2. Around 4 o'clock, Brenda stood up and clapped her hands. Everyone, end of week hangout in conference room B. Sodas, chips, good vibes. You earned it. People drifted toward the room, laughing, chatting. Craig had set up a table. Soda cans lined in rows, chip bags torn open, music from someone's phone speaker. Whitney was not invited. No email, no mention, not even a look. Denise found her minutes later, pushing her cleaning cart. They're all in there, Denise said quietly, having their little celebration. Whitney stood up. I left my laptop bag in that room. I need to get it. Denise studied her face. Something heavy settled behind her eyes, the look of a woman who had watched this story play out too many times. Be careful in there, baby. Whitney walked down the hallway, heels clicking against tile. The laughter grew louder with every step, loose, careless, the kind that only happens when people forget they're being watched. She pushed the door open. The room hit her at once. Warm soda smell, cheap chips, humidity of too many bodies in a closed space. 20 people scattered around. The laughter faded in a wave. One by one, heads turned. Brenda straightened up from the far wall, eyes locked on Whitney, sharp, hungry, entertained. Well, well, look who showed up. Craig set his drink down, that slow smirk spreading across his face. Whitney kept steady. I just need my bag. Brenda tilted her head. Oh, look, the charity case came for her little purse. Laughter. Not nervous, entertained. The kind that says, keep going. This is the show. Craig stood, reached for his soda, full, freshly opened, still hissing at the rim. Walked toward Whitney, stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could smell the cola on his breath. He looked her in the eyes, smiled, then raised the can above her head and poured. Every single drop. The brown liquid hit her hair first, ran down her forehead in thin streams, her cheeks, her blazer, her cream blouse, the one she'd ironed that morning at 6:15 with the same care she brought to everything in her life. "Now pick up the mop," Craig said, "and clean." The room erupted. Laughter so loud it bounced off the glass walls. Someone slapped the table. Someone clapped. Actual applause. Brenda stood with her arms folded and a grin so wide it looked rehearsed. Whitney did not move. Soda dripped from her chin onto the carpet. The fizzing crackled near her ear. The sticky, sweet smell filled her nose and mixed with something hotter building behind her eyes. Her hands trembled at her sides. Not from fear, from the crushing effort of holding herself together while 20 people watched and waited for her to break. Nobody helped. One woman placed a napkin on the table edge without eye contact, then stepped back. That was the most courage anyone in that room could find. Whitney stood there for 10 seconds that lasted 10 years. Then she wiped her face, picked up her bag, walked out without a word. The door closed. The laughter continued behind it. But here's what none of them knew. That small black camera dome in the corner of conference room B was recording. Video and audio, crystal clear. Every insult, every laugh, every drop of soda that hit Whitney's face. 3 weeks earlier, Pinnacle Dynamics had upgraded its entire security system. Every floor, every conference room, every hallway. Part of a company-wide culture audit, launched after anonymous complaints about workplace behavior. That audit was not ordered by HR, not by legal. It was ordered personally by the CEO, Elliot Keller. And right now, at this exact moment, Elliot sat alone in his corner office on the 30th floor, watching the live feed on his monitor. He had seen everything, the insults, the laughter, the soda running down his wife's face while 20 people stood and watched. His jaw locked tight. The muscles in his neck stood out like cables. His right hand closed into a fist on the desk, knuckles white against dark wood. He didn't yell. He didn't slam anything. He reached for his phone, made 2 calls. Angela Torres, General Counsel. My office, now. Head of Security. Conference Room B, Floor 14. All footage between 4 and 5:30 today. Lock it down. Nobody touches it. He set the phone down gently and stared at the frozen frame. His wife, standing alone, drenched, surrounded by people who were supposed to be her colleagues. Monday was coming. That weekend, Whitney didn't tell Elliot what happened. She didn't have to. He'd watched every second of it from 30 floors above, and he hadn't slept since. Saturday morning, Angela Torres sat across from him in his home office. 2 laptops open, legal codes pulled up. The security footage paused on the frame where the soda left Craig's can. Angela had reviewed the tape 4 times. She didn't need a 5th. Assault, she said. Hostile work environment. Racially motivated harassment. And that's just the starting list. Elliot nodded. His voice was calm. The kind of calm that comes right before something irreversible. I want everything ready by Monday morning. Termination letters, security escorts, and I want every employee on that floor in the conference room at 9 a.m. sharp. No exceptions. Angela looked at him. You're going down there yourself. It wasn't a question. She already knew. Yes, Elliot said. I am. Monday, 9 o'clock. The 14th floor hummed with its usual rhythm. Keyboards clicking, phones buzzing, the smell of burned coffee drifting from the break room. Brenda was at her desk, leaning back in her chair, telling Craig about her weekend trip to the outlet mall. She was laughing about a pair of shoes she bought at half price. Craig was nodding along, sipping his coffee, grinning about nothing in particular. Nobody noticed the elevator light change. The doors slid open. Out stepped Elliot Keller, dark suit, white shirt, no tie. His face was still, completely, unnervingly still. The kind of expression that made people stop talking before they even understood why. Beside him stood Angela Torres, holding a leather folder. Behind them, 2 uniformed security officers. The floor went quiet. Not gradually. Instantly. Like someone had pressed mute on the entire room. People stood up from their cubicles. Heads turned. Whispers started and died in the same breath. Most of them had never seen the CEO in person. Some didn't even know what he looked like. But the security officers behind him told them everything they needed to know. This was not a visit. This was an arrival. Elliot walked. Steady. Unhurried. His shoes clicked against the floor with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. He passed row after row of frozen employees, past the printer station, past the break room, past Whitney's relocated desk in the dark corner by the supply closet. He glanced at it just for a second, and his jaw tightened. Then he stopped, right in front of Brenda Lawson's desk. Brenda looked up. The smile she'd been wearing 10 seconds ago was gone, replaced by something she hadn't felt in 12 years at this company. Uncertainty. "Can I help you?" she said. Her voice wavered on the last word. Elliot didn't sit, didn't lean, didn't soften a single thing. "Good morning. My name is Elliot Keller. I'm the CEO of this company." A ripple of shock moved through the floor. Heads snapped toward him. Someone near the window inhaled sharply. Brenda blinked. Her fingers curled around the edge of her desk. Elliot continued. Same tone, same volume, not a single wasted word. "And Whitney Keller, the woman you've been tormenting for the past 2 weeks, is my wife." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was a void. The kind of silence that swallows sound whole. Craig's coffee cup slipped from his hand and hit the desk with a dull thud. Brown liquid spilled across his keyboard. He didn't move to clean it. Brenda's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Then, stammering, shaking, she tried. We didn't. It was just, we were just joking around. It wasn't." Elliot raised one hand. She stopped. "A joke," he said. His voice was quiet now. Dangerously quiet. "You called my wife a charity case. You relocated her desk to a closet. You sabotaged her work in front of leadership. And your colleague poured a can of soda on her head while you watched and laughed." He paused. "That's not a joke. That's not a misunderstanding. Let me show you what it actually is." He turned to Angela Torres. She stepped forward, opened her laptop, and connected it to the conference room display screen that was visible from the open floor. "Everyone, eyes up here," Elliot said. The footage played. Full color, full audio, every second of Friday afternoon in Conference Room B. Brenda's voice, crisp and unmistakable, calling Whitney a charity case. Craig walking forward with the soda can, the slow pour, the laughter, the clapping. Whitney standing motionless, drenched, while 20 people watched and did nothing. The playback lasted 4 minutes. Nobody on the floor breathed. When it ended, the screen went dark. The only sound was the air conditioning humming through the vents. Elliot stood facing the room. His eyes moved from face to face, slow, deliberate, reading every expression like a verdict. Several employees had tears running down their cheeks. One woman near the back had her hand over her mouth. Craig stared at the floor, his face the color of old paper. Brenda's mascara was running. She was shaking. "I didn't know," Brenda whispered. "I didn't know she was your wife." Elliot looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke, and every person on that floor heard it clearly. "That shouldn't matter. She's a human being. That should have been enough." The footage had barely faded when Elliot turned to Angela Torres. She opened the leather folder and pulled out 2 documents, white paper, black ink. Angela stepped in front of Brenda's desk. "Brenda Lawson, effective immediately, your employment is terminated. Grounds: sustained workplace harassment, hostile work environment, racial discrimination, and violation of the company code of conduct." Brenda's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. "You can't do this. I've been here 12 years. I built this department." Elliot didn't blink. And in those 12 years, you used your position to torment anyone who didn't look like you. That ends today." Angela turned to Craig. He was barely standing. His face had gone from pale to gray. "Craig Norris, also terminated. Grounds: physical assault, complicity in racial harassment, and conduct unbecoming of an employee." Craig's voice came out cracked. "It was just soda. It was a prank." "You poured a liquid on a coworker's head without her consent," Angela said flatly. "Under North Carolina law, that's simple assault. Pinnacle Dynamics will be filing a formal incident report with local authorities and cooperating with any criminal investigation." Craig grabbed the edge of his desk to steady himself. His mouth moved, but nothing came out. Brenda tried one more time, tears streaming, mascara leaving dark tracks down her cheeks. Her voice broke into something between a sob and a plea. "Please, I have a mortgage. I've given everything to this company. You can't throw that away over one bad day." Elliot took one step closer, close enough that she had to look up at him. "One bad day?" His voice was low, controlled. "You moved my wife's desk to a closet. You sabotaged her work in front of leadership. You called her a diversity hire on day one. You called her a charity case in front of 20 people. Then you stood there smiling while your friend poured soda on her head." He paused. "That wasn't one bad day, Brenda. That was who you are. And 12 years doesn't earn you the right to dehumanize someone." Brenda dropped her face into her hands and sobbed. The security officers stepped forward. Brenda and Craig collected their personal items: phones, photos, a coffee mug with Brenda's initials. Then they were walked to the elevator in full view of every employee on the floor. Nobody spoke. Nobody looked away. The elevator doors closed. 12 years of Brenda Lawson's reign ended in under 15 minutes, but Elliot wasn't finished. He turned to the back of the room. Patricia Coleman stood half-hidden behind a cubicle partition, arms folded, trying to look like a neutral observer instead of what she actually was, a participant. "Mrs. Coleman," Elliot said, "Whitney filed a formal complaint with your office 10 days ago. What action did you take?" Patricia smoothed her blouse. "We were still reviewing. These things take time." "You did nothing." "Not angry. Worse. Certain. You received a complaint with specific allegations, named witnesses, and documented incidents, and you buried it." Patricia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "You are suspended immediately, pending a full audit of every discrimination complaint your department has handled in the last 5 years." Patricia grabbed her purse and was escorted out. The floor was still. The air smelled like stale coffee and cold sweat. 40 people stood frozen, watching the world they knew collapse in real time. Then, movement. A woman walked toward Whitney, who had been standing quietly near the hallway entrance. Not smiling, not gloating, just watching. "Whitney," the woman said, voice shaking. "I was in that room Friday. I should have stopped it." Whitney looked at her, steady, exhausted. "I appreciate that, but an apology after the fact isn't the same as standing up in the moment." The woman nodded, wiped her eyes, stepped back. 2 more approached, then a third, each offering some version of the same words. "I'm sorry. I should have done more." Whitney listened to every one. She didn't dismiss them. She didn't embrace them. She accepted their words the way you accept rain after a drought. Too late to save what burned, but not too late to matter. Then a pair of arms wrapped around her from the side. Firm, warm, trembling. Denise Holloway, gray uniform, kind eyes full of tears. "I knew it," Denise whispered. "I knew you were something special." Whitney held her back. For the first time all morning, her composure cracked, just a fraction. One tear slipped down her cheek before she wiped it away. Elliot watched from across the room. He caught her eye, and in that look passed everything words couldn't carry. The terminations were just the beginning. What came next hit harder and lasted longer. Tuesday morning, Whitney walked into the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department with Angela Torres by her side. She filed a formal police report. The security footage, all 4 minutes and 32 seconds of it, was submitted as evidence. Time-stamped, audio verified, every frame admissible. The detective assigned to the case watched the footage once, then watched it again, then leaned back in his chair and said, "This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen in 15 years." By Wednesday evening, warrants were issued. Craig Norris was arrested at his apartment at 6:40 a.m. on Thursday. 2 officers knocked on his door. He answered in sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt, the kind of man who thought consequences were something that happened to other people. He was handcuffed, placed in the back of a patrol car, and driven to the Mecklenburg County Jail for booking. Fingerprinted. Photographed. The mugshot showed a man who looked 10 years older than he had on Friday. He was charged with simple assault and battery. Brenda Lawson was arrested 3 hours later at her home. She answered the door in a bathrobe, holding a mug of coffee that slipped from her hands and shattered on the tile floor when she saw the officers. She was charged with accessory to assault and criminal harassment under North Carolina general statutes. The narrator lets the irony settle. 2 people who spent weeks making Whitney feel like a criminal were now the ones being booked, photographed, and processed through the system they thought would never touch them. But Whitney wasn't done, not even close. The following week, she filed a civil lawsuit, with Angela Torres's guidance and an outside attorney retained specifically for the case. The suit named Brenda Lawson and Craig Norris individually. The charges: intentional infliction of emotional distress and racially motivated workplace harassment. Separately, Whitney filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, targeting the systemic failure of Pinnacle Dynamics' Human Resources Department to address discrimination. The complaint detailed Patricia Coleman's dismissal of Whitney's report, the lack of any follow-up investigation, and the pattern of buried complaints that the internal audit was already beginning to uncover. The lawsuit sought compensatory and punitive damages. The number was substantial, the kind of number that makes insurance companies schedule emergency meetings. Then the media found the story. It started local. Diane Ashford, a veteran anchor at the Charlotte NBC affiliate, ran the segment on the 6 o'clock news. The headline filled the screen in bold white letters. "Corporate bullies didn't know their target was the CEO's wife." The footage played on air, edited for broadcast, but the key moments were unmistakable. Brenda's voice calling Whitney a charity case. Craig walking forward with the soda can, the slow pour, the laughter. Whitney standing still, drenched, saying nothing. By 9 p.m., the clip had been picked up by 3 national outlets. By midnight, it was everywhere. Social media erupted. The footage spread across every platform, clipped, captioned, shared millions of times within 48 hours. The hashtag #JusticeForWhitney trended nationally for 3 consecutive days. Comment sections overflowed with fury, support, and personal stories from people who had lived through something painfully similar. News panels debated workplace racism, bystander responsibility, and the failure of corporate HR systems to protect the people they were designed to serve. Former Pinnacle Dynamics employees began coming forward, 1, then 4, then 9, each with their own account of discrimination on the 14th floor. Every story pointed back to the same name, Brenda Lawson. 12 years, dozens of targets, and not once had anyone in that building stopped her. The criminal trial came 3 months later. It was covered by local and national press, cameras outside the courthouse, reporters on the steps, the kind of attention that doesn't fade with a news cycle. Craig Norris chose to plead guilty. His attorney negotiated a deal. 90 days in county jail, suspended. 200 hours of community service. Mandatory anger management classes. Mandatory racial sensitivity training. A permanent restraining order keeping him away from Whitney, Pinnacle Dynamics, and all company properties. The judge accepted the plea, but made a point of addressing Craig directly from the bench. "You are a grown man who poured a beverage on a woman's head to humiliate her in front of her colleagues. That is not a prank. That is cruelty. And the fact that you still refer to it as a joke tells me you have a long way to go. Craig said nothing. He stared at the table in front of him and didn't look up. Brenda Lawson fought the charges. She hired a defense attorney who argued it was workplace conflict, not criminal behavior. That Brenda hadn't personally poured the soda, that her comments were protected speech. The jury didn't buy it. Brenda was found guilty of criminal harassment and accessory to assault. The sentence? 180 days in jail, suspended. 18 months of probation, 300 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, a permanent restraining order. The judge's remarks were sharper this time. Mrs. Lawson, what this court finds most disturbing is not a single incident. It is a sustained campaign of cruelty directed at a colleague based on the color of her skin. You weaponized your seniority. You created an environment where abuse was entertainment. And when given the chance to stop it, you encouraged it. This court hopes the consequences you face today serve as a reminder that no amount of tenure protects you from accountability. Brenda sobbed through the entire statement. Her attorney requested tissues. The civil case never went to trial. Brenda and Craig settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, rumored to be significant enough that both would be paying it off for years. As part of the settlement, both were required to issue formal, written public apologies. The apologies were published on Pinnacle Dynamics' website and picked up by multiple news outlets. And Patricia Coleman? The internal audit that Elliot ordered uncovered exactly what Denise had predicted. Patricia had buried at least 4 discrimination complaints over the previous 3 years, each one documented, each one ignored. She was permanently terminated. 2 of the former complainants filed their own civil suits against her individually. Her legal fees alone would follow her for a decade. The 14th floor got a new HR representative within the month. The culture audit expanded company-wide, and every employee at Pinnacle Dynamics received a letter from the CEO, not a memo, not an email, a letter, reminding them that the company's values were not decorations on a wall, they were expectations. And from that day forward, they would be enforced. 6 months later, the 14th floor of Pinnacle Dynamics looked like a different place. Not because the walls had changed, because the air had changed. The silence that once meant fear now meant focus. The laughter that once meant cruelty now meant connection. Whitney Keller was still there. Same building, same company, different title. She had been promoted to Director of Culture and Inclusion, a role that didn't exist before that Monday morning. Elliot created it not because his wife needed a title, but because the company needed someone who understood what it felt like to be invisible inside its own walls. Whitney rebuilt the role from the ground up. She replaced internal HR review with independent third-party oversight. She launched mandatory bystander intervention training across every department. She implemented anonymous reporting channels that went directly to legal, so no complaint could ever be buried in a desk drawer again. Every quarter, she led a company-wide town hall. Not a corporate presentation with buzzwords, a real conversation. Honest, uncomfortable, necessary. At the most recent one, Elliot stood in the back of the auditorium, arms folded, quiet pride and the faintest smile at the corner of his mouth. Denise Holloway sat in the front row, beaming. She had been promoted to facilities supervisor, with a raise, benefits, and a recommendation letter written personally by Whitney. Whitney looked out at the room and said, "I didn't come to this company to be the CEO's wife. I came here to do a job. And now, part of that job is making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else in this building." The applause lasted 45 seconds. Denise clapped the loudest. Now, where did the others end up? Brenda Lawson lost everything she spent 12 years building. Her name became a case study in workplace harassment seminars across the state. She applied to 14 companies after her conviction. None called back. Last anyone heard, she was working a register at a retail store in a neighboring county, a long way from the desk she once ruled like a throne. Craig Norris completed his 200 hours of community service. He moved out of state before the coverage cooled, declined every media request, changed his number, deleted his social media. Whether he learned anything or simply ran is something only he knows. Patricia Coleman was permanently terminated after the audit confirmed she buried at least 4 discrimination complaints over 3 years. 2 former employees filed civil suits against her. The woman who once sat behind a desk decorated with the word integrity now spent her mornings answering to her own attorney for every complaint she threw away. Denise Holloway got the ending she deserved. New title, better pay, a supervisor's office with a window, the first in 9 years at that company. She kept a framed photo on her desk, her and Whitney, taken the day of the first town hall, both smiling, both standing tall. So here's what I want from you right now. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever watched someone being mistreated and had to choose between speaking up and staying quiet? What did you do? And if you could go back, would you do it differently? If this story hit you somewhere real, leave a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because we've got more stories coming. And remember one thing before you go. Silence isn't neutral. In the face of injustice, silence is a choice. Make sure it's not the one you regret.